Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and today we are taking a look at the brand new iPhone 11. Now, last year I claimed that the iPhone XR was the best iPhone for most people. It combined a lot of the features you would want with an iPhone with a better value over the XS for $250 less. Now it looks like Apple is poised to repeat history here by offering the iPhone 11 at $50 less than the iPhone XR at just $699. So is last year's iPhone 11 as good as the iPhone XR? Well, I've been using the phone for about the past 24 hours now, and I definitely have some initial impressions I want to share with you. But first, let's go back in time and unbox the iPhone 11 and see what Apple has inside of the box. So unlike the iPhone 11 Pro, the iPhone 11 comes in a white box. As soon as you lift up the box, you are greeted by the iPhone 11, which now includes two cameras, a normal wide angle and then an ultra wide angle camera. Inside of the box, of course, we get the usual documentation, a 5-watt charging brick, not an 18-watt fast charger like the new iPhone 11 Pro gets, and we also get a USB-A to Lightning cable, and of course some Lightning earpods. At first glance, the iPhone 11 looks very similar to the iPhone XR. It comes in 6 colors, black, white, yellow, purple, red, and the color I got, which is green. And these colors are more pastel than the bright, vivid colors of last year's iPhone XR. Personally, I think I like the colors for the iPhone XR over the iPhone 11's more pastel colors. However, I will say that the iPhone 11 does look better in person. The iPhone 11 also retains the glossy glass back of the iPhone XR, while the new iPhone 11 Pro opts for a more matte finish. Personally, I am finding that I like the new matte back on the iPhone 11 Pro over the older glossy design that is still on the iPhone 11. The softer matte design on the iPhone 11 Pro just feels a little bit better in the hands, and it doesn't show off fingerprints nearly as much as the glossy back on the iPhone 11. The iPhone 11 also retains the aluminum siding of the iPhone XR, whereas the iPhone 11 Pro continues to have the stainless steel siding that was found on the XS and XS Max. The only major design difference between the XR and the iPhone 11 is of course the new square camera bump and the additional second camera. There's also a centered Apple logo now and no iPhone branding at the bottom. But the big change is definitely the cameras, and we will talk about that a little bit later. On the front of the iPhone 11, we get the same Liquid Retina LCD display with 326 pixels per inch and the same brightness as last year's iPhone XR with 625 nits. The new iPhone 11 Pro now gets 800 nits of brightness during normal use, so it should technically be better in direct sunlight. Last year, I said the display differences between the iPhone XR and the iPhone XS Max were kind of minor when you looked at them side by side. I would say the improvements that Apple made to the iPhone 11's Pro XDR display are a little more standoutish this year, especially when watching movie content thanks to the iPhone 11 Pro's 1200 nits of peak brightness when watching HDR content. Another area where the Pro wins is with iOS 13's new dark mode. Dark mode looks a little washed out on the iPhone 11's LCD screen compared to the ultimate dark levels on the Pro's OLED panel. So does the iPhone 11 Pro have a better display than the 11? Yes, however, I think most people aren't going to notice the difference in day-to-day tasks. Looking at both phones' home screens side by side, they both still look pretty good to me, so most people are not going to notice the difference when using it for day-to-day tasks like web browsing, social media apps, or even watching most content on YouTube. If you do notice the difference, that's why the iPhone 11 Pro exists. Another thing to note about the screen is that both the iPhone 11 and the iPhone Pro have haptic touch, where last year the XS had a slight edge because of 3D touch. Now that they both have haptic touch, that is an even comparison. If you're coming from an iPhone XR, haptic touch has a lot of improvements in iOS 13 that make it act a lot more like 3D touch. So now you can long press on the home screen for quick actions, long press links in Safari to preview them, and then press into them again to get the full web page. And these improvements to haptic touch make them almost as good as 3D touch was. One thing that did change is the new speakers inside of the iPhone 11, which support what Apple calls spatial audio, and they also now support Dolby Atmos. Just like the iPhone 11 Pro, these speakers sound incredibly good for phone speakers, delivering a pretty immersive experience with crisp, clear, and loud sound. This year's iPhone 11 also comes with the A13 chip. Apple's custom silicon continues to impress year over year. Every interaction I've done with the iPhone 11 has been smooth, from just the basic tasks to playing the latest games in Apple Arcade. However, I still need to spend a bit more time with the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro before I can really judge the performance gains of the A13 chip. Battery life is also an area where I have to do a lot more testing before I can draw a final conclusion. I've only had the phone for 24 hours, so it wouldn't be fair to judge the battery life just based on a day's use. However, Apple is claiming that the iPhone 11 will be getting 1 more hour of battery life than the iPhone XR. Last year, the iPhone XR had some pretty great battery life, so if Apple did manage to squeeze an additional hour in there, the iPhone 11 should have some pretty good battery life as well. Apple is also claiming that the iPhone 11 will have more durable glass and better water resistance than last year's iPhone XR. Again, this is another area where I'm going to have to use the phone for an extended period of time before I can judge whether or not the durability holds up. Okay, let's talk about the biggest upgrade to the iPhone 11 this year, the cameras. So the iPhone 11 comes with 2 cameras, a wide-angle camera and an ultra-wide-angle camera. If you're going with the iPhone 11 Pro, that gets 3 cameras, a wide-angle camera, an ultra-wide-angle camera, and a 2x telephoto camera. The wide-angle camera on the iPhone 11 does take some really stunning pictures. The pictures I've taken so far have good exposure, contrast, and are sharp-looking photos. And you can just get a good idea of how the iPhone 11 cameras are performing by going through some of these sample photos. It does a really good job, and it is pretty consistent with the amount of great photos it takes. The addition of the ultra-wide camera gives a new perspective to photos. It's definitely inferior to the wide-angle camera because of the 2.4 aperture, so it lets in a lot less light, but it's definitely a fun camera to play around with, and you can get some really interesting shots if you have good lighting. Another thing to note is the transitions going from the ultra-wide-angle lens to the wide-angle lens. Apple said they spent a lot of time color calibrating each lens in the factory so that transitions would look as smooth as possible, and I think they do a pretty good job here. It doesn't feel like you're using 2 separate camera lenses, it just feels like you're using one singular lens with a lot of different zoom options. Portrait mode also gets an upgrade this year thanks to the 2 cameras on the iPhone 11, so you get enhanced portrait mode, which can now recognize objects and pets, unlike the iPhone XR's portrait mode, which could only take a portrait mode whenever you had a human face in it. The front-facing camera also gets an upgrade this year from 7 megapixels to 12 megapixels. And the front-facing camera looks to be a major upgrade compared to the iPhone XR. All of the photos that I have taken so far with the front-facing camera have been super sharp and detailed. The iPhone 11's front-facing camera can also give you a wider perspective, which is helpful for group selfies. Another new feature is the ability to record slow-motion video with the front-facing camera. Apple is calling this slow fees, and they can be a little bit fun, but maybe a little gimmicky. To me, by far the best addition to this year's iPhone 11 camera is the night mode, which Apple's competitors like the Pixel have had for a little while now. However, although Apple might not be first to night mode, they just might be the best. I am seriously impressed with the low light level photography I am getting out of this camera. Night mode has made me rethink what kind of shots I can get with an iPhone. I also love how the iPhone 11 gives you a live preview of night mode, which something like the Pixel will only show you what it looks like after the photo is taken. I still want to go out and take a lot more night mode photos before my full review, but so far I am really impressed with this feature. The biggest negative I can give to the iPhone 11 right now is that a lot of people are complaining about bugs in iOS 13. Now, I myself have run into a few bugs, but nothing that has really hampered my experience, so your mileage may vary. One other smaller criticism I would like to make is that even though the iPhone 11 starts at $699, which is $50 cheaper than the iPhone XR, that is only for 64 gigabytes. I would really recommend you spend an extra $50 to bump up the storage to 128 gigabytes. It's only $50 more and you get double the base storage. And that's going to be really helpful down the line. If you use a lot of storage, it's going to prolong the life of your phone, and you're probably going to use a lot of storage because the iPhone 11 takes such great photos and 4K video. Okay, so even though I had limited time with the iPhone 11, and you still might want to wait for my full review to see my ultimate buying recommendations, I have to say so far, I am really liking this year's iPhone, especially with that lower $699 starting price. Of course, you don't get all the bells and whistles of the new iPhone 11 Pro with its matte glass back, increased water resistance, and additional 2x camera, and the new Super Retina XDR display, but I think those upgrades might not be worth it for most people. I think just like last year's iPhone XR, the iPhone 11 is going to be the iPhone that most people should buy. Alright everyone, and that's going to do it for this video. If you liked the video, make sure you give me a like. If you want to see more from my channel, including that full iPhone 11 review, make sure you're subscribed. Also, be sure to let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the iPhone 11? And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.